Sun Valley, Denver's poorest neighborhood, will get a facelift after it was announced this week that the city will be awarded a $30 million federal grant. It's the largest grant that Denver Housing Authority has received to date. Construction will begin next year on 750 city-owned mixed-income housing units, parks, a food market, and commercial space. David, a good use for federal funds?
No. We have a gigantic budget deficit, and we're borrowing all this money from China. Local Denver and Colorado should take care of housing in Denver and Colorado, and the federal government should stick to things that are actually in the U.S. Constitution, like national defense and post offices. The Sun Valley is it's the neighborhood west of, between Federal and I-25 near Mile High Stadium, and so people go through it a lot, and obviously a troubled place. But that's partly because 95% of the population is already in housing projects. Now, maybe this new thing will be an improvement. Certainly, they're talking about riverfront expansions. That seems obviously a good thing that can benefit everyone in terms of how the rest of what they do. We'll see. On the one hand, there's the hope that this growth in Lodo and all that will cross the river and start going on there, which would be great. On the other hand, that's going to make it less affordable for people to live in the neighborhood. But so I think we'll see. But at least the park side seems good.
Eric, can a project this big with this much federal funding coming into it be done right?
We'll see. I mean, it can be done right. Will it be done right? Only time will tell. I'll disagree with David on this. I mean, if you want to go back to some strict reading of the U.S. Constitution, maybe this isn't an appropriate responsibility, but I think we have been hundreds of years past that point in time. If those funds are going to be available, I'm glad to see Denver go ahead and obtain and take advantage of those funds. This is a very troubled neighborhood. I've visited. David refers to Mile High Stadium. I think he means Sports Authority Field, named after a bankrupt sporting goods company at this point in time. But whether it's after a ball game or on the bike path or whatever, I see the neighborhood just as an outsider. It's a neighborhood that needs help and deserves help. It strikes me there is a fine line here between economic development, which is what this is, or neighborhood redevelopment, and gentrification. And you don't know where that line is. And gentrification is a fact of life. Neighborhoods are always evolving, changing, some in a positive direction, some in a negative direction. And there will be displacement here, just as there is massive displacement going on around Denver. That said, I still think it is a net positive. You look across I-25 to what's gone on in that area around 10th and Osage, near the light rail stop there, and that's impressive improvement and vitality of that neighborhood. I hope the same thing happens in Sun Valley.
Penn, I'd like to piggyback right on where Eric left off. You have a population, it's Denver's poorest neighborhood. I can't imagine after $30 million worth of investment, those same folks will be able to enjoy and still afford that neighborhood. I don't know what part of it's affordable housing and things like that, but it's certainly going to look different. This studio is down here in 5 Points, an historic neighborhood. It's been great to see how this neighborhood has grown, but we can walk down the street and see how gentrification, the changeover of businesses and the population really affects a neighborhood. Is this a good way to help the poorest neighborhood in Denver?
I think it is for a couple of reasons. First, remember the grant is to Denver Housing Authority, whose principal mission is to, under state law and federal law, provide housing for people who are below the area median income. So it will be focused on that population. Secondly, remember DHA has a history of doing some of these developments well. When you look at North Lincoln Park, when you look at Curtis Park, DHA has gotten federal grants, whether it's through Hope or Home or something else, and they've been able to redevelop sites and put a number of the residents back on site, because some of this still will be subsidized housing for poor residents. Some of it may be market rate, but they're going to add some amenities with some commercial development also, which is probably badly needed. The last thing I'll offer is, part of how we got here is well-intentioned but misguided policy of the federal government in the 50s and 60s when they built these mammoth projects to institutionalize poor people, predominantly people of color, and threw them in all of these large buildings that looked like prisons, that had no amenities, that had no elevators in many instances. I mean, a 10-story high-rise with no elevator. and expected them to thrive. Well, they became breeding grounds for a lot of other things. So it's taken a long time, but to the extent the federal government is assisting these developments, they're doing it the right way.
Patty, is this $30 million grant a boon for Denver?
Boon for Denver, and what can go wrong with Ben Carson leading HUD coming January? He knows all about this kind of thing. It's fascinating with Sun Valley because what has happened to the Platte River over the last 40 years since the Greenway Foundation came in, and how that part of town has been rejuvenated when in fact no one wanted to live along the Platte, which was just a contaminated cesspool. And so of course you put public housing down there. Now it's an increasingly valuable part of town. You've got Cronky looking at expanding there. You've got the Broncos also looking at maybe taking advantage of this project. So I hope the $30 million is put to good use. I hope it provides great housing for these people who really need it, and absolutely some commercial, because there are no stores, there are no groceries. So it could be really, really great. And as I said, with Ben Carson in charge, should be fine.